The shuttle from Earth's orbital station docked with a soft clang that echoed through the metal walls. Danny Carter grabbed his bag from the overhead compartment and took a deep breath. Through the small window, he could see the massive structure of Valora 9, the Galactic Union's most famous training academy. It floated in the darkness of space like a city made of silver and glass, with lights blinking in patterns he did not recognize. He was the first human to ever train here. The airlock hissed open, and Danny stepped into a wide corridor filled with beings he had only seen in briefing videos. A group of tall, insect-like creatures walked past him, their hard shells clicking with each step. Behind them, a pair of cat-like aliens with golden fur watched him with narrow eyes. Everyone seemed to be staring. Danny kept his face calm and walked forward. At the end of the corridor, a Corvani waited for him. The species looked like giant mantises, with 4 arms and large compound eyes that reflected the light in strange ways. This one wore a uniform marked with symbols that Danny knew meant instructor rank. "You are the human," the Corvani said. His voice was sharp, made of clicks and hisses that the translator in Danny's ear turned into words. "I am Instructor Velik. I will process your arrival." "Yes, sir," Danny replied. "Thank you for having me." Velik's mandibles moved in a way that might have been surprise. Perhaps he had not expected politeness. He turned without another word and began walking, clearly expecting Danny to follow. They moved through hallways filled with cadets from dozens of species. Some were small and covered in scales. Others were massive, with thick hides and horns. A few floated, instead of walking, their bodies made of something that looked like living smoke. All of them stopped to watch the human pass by. Danny heard whispers translated by his earpiece. "Is that the Death Worlder? Look how small it is. I heard their planet kills most species within days. Why would the Union let something like that train here?" Danny ignored them all. He had been warned about this. Katie Marsh, a human communications officer stationed on Valora 9, had sent him messages before his arrival. She had been here for 2 years and knew how the aliens viewed humanity. "They think we're primitive," she had written. "Dangerous but weak. They don't understand us yet. You'll have to show them." Velik led him to a small office and gestured for him to sit. The chair was too tall and shaped wrong for a human body. But Danny managed. The instructor settled behind a desk covered in floating screens and began tapping at them with his upper arms. "Your file is unusual," Velik said without looking up. "Your species has been part of the Galactic Union for only 12 of your years. You have no established military tradition recognized by Union standards. Your technology is far behind most member worlds." He paused, compound eyes, finally focusing on Danny. "Why are you here?" Danny considered the question carefully. "Because someone has to be first," he said. "Earth wants to be a real part of the Union. That means we need to serve alongside everyone else. I volunteered to start that process." "You volunteered," Velik repeated. The translator could not capture tone very well, but Danny thought he heard disbelief. "You understand that this academy has a failure rate of 40%? Cadets from warrior species, from worlds with ancient combat traditions, wash out every cycle. What makes you think a human can succeed?" "I don't think anything, sir," Danny said. "I'm just going to try my best." Velik stared at him for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been disgust. It was hard to tell with Corvani. "You have been assigned to Squad 7, the instructor said. "They are waiting in Barracks Block 4. Training begins tomorrow at first light cycle. Do not be late." Danny stood and picked up his bag. "Thank you, sir." He left the office and followed the signs to Block 4. The barracks were simple rooms with bunks stacked along the walls and storage lockers between them. When Danny entered, 5 aliens turned to look at him. The first was a Rylothi, a slender reptilian creature with blue scales that shimmered under the lights. The species was known for telepathy, and this one flinched backward when Danny met its eyes. Next to it stood a Felisari, a species that looked like a lion walking on 2 legs. This one was large and muscular, with a mane of dark fur and teeth that showed when he curled his lip at the human. In the corner, A young Corvani sat on a lower bunk, smaller than Velik but with the same insect features. Unlike the others, this one leaned forward with what looked like curiosity. Finally, near the window, two identical beings stood close together. They were Villani, humanoid but with skin that glowed softly with bioluminescent patterns. Twins, Danny guessed. Nobody spoke. Danny walked to the only empty bunk and set down his bag. "I'm Danny," he said. "I guess we're squad mates," the Felisari growled low in his throat. "I am Goreth, and I did not ask for a Deathworlder in my squad. None of us did," the Rylothi added quietly. Its voice was soft, almost musical. "I am Tyrell. No offense is meant. Human. But your kind has a reputation." "What kind of reputation?" Danny asked, keeping his voice neutral. "Violent," Goreth said. "Unpredictable. Your world is classified as a Class 12 death planet. Only criminals and monsters evolve on such worlds." The small Corvani clicked in what sounded like disagreement. "That is not scientifically accurate. My name is Nyx. I have read about Earth. It is hostile, yes, but humans show signs of advanced social development." "Doesn't matter," Gorath interrupted. "Deathworlders don't belong in the Union military. They're too dangerous to trust, and too fragile to be useful." Danny sat down on his bunk and looked at the Felisari calmly. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "Just to train and learn like everyone else." Gorath's eyes narrowed. "We'll see how long that lasts." The twin Villani exchanged glances, their bioluminescent patterns flickering in some kind of silent communication. Then one of them spoke, her voice like soft chimes. "I am Sela. This is my sister Mira. We will reserve judgment until we see what you can do, human." Danny nodded. "That's fair." He unpacked his few belongings while the others watched. A change of clothes, basic toiletries, a small photograph of his family back on Earth, showing his parents and younger sister standing in front of their house in Colorado. He placed it on the shelf above his bunk. Tonight, he would rest. Tomorrow, training would begin, and he would have his first real chance to show these aliens what humans were made of. He didn't know if he would succeed, but he knew he would give everything he had. That was all anyone could do. The first cycle of training was harder than Danny had expected, but not in the ways he had prepared for. The physical exercises were manageable. Running through obstacle courses, climbing walls, crawling through tight spaces. His body handled it well enough. What made things difficult was everything else. His squadmates did not trust him. They did not want to work with him. And they made sure he knew it every single day. During formation drills, Gorath would position himself as far from Danny as possible, forcing the human to stand at the end of the line where instructors always looked first for mistakes. During mealtimes, the Felisari would take his food to another table, and Tyrell would quietly follow. Only Nyx seemed willing to sit near Danny, and even the small Corvani kept a careful distance. The twins, Sela and Mira, remained neutral. They did not avoid Danny, but they did not seek him out either. Their glowing patterns would flicker whenever he walked past, and sometimes he caught them watching him, with expressions he could not read. "They're analyzing you," Katie told him during one of their evening calls. The communications officer had become his only real connection on the station, and he looked forward to their conversations. Villani are observers by nature. They won't decide how they feel about you until they have enough data. "Great," Danny said, rubbing his tired eyes. "So I'm a science experiment. To them, everyone is a science experiment." Katie smiled through the screen. "How are you holding up?" "Really?" Danny thought about lying, about saying everything was fine. But Katie had been honest with him since before he arrived, and she deserved the same in return. "It's lonely," he admitted. "I knew it would be hard, but I didn't expect to feel so isolated. Nobody talks to me unless they have to. Nobody wants me on their team during exercises. Yesterday, during a combat simulation, Gorath let me get hit by training fire 3 times because he wouldn't cover my position." Katie's expression darkened. "That's dangerous. You should report it." And be the human who can't handle a little hazing? Danny shook his head. No. I have to earn their respect the hard way. If I complain, they'll never see me as an equal. There's a difference between hazing and sabotage, Danny. I know. I'm being careful. He managed a small smile. Don't worry about me. I've dealt with worse. That was true enough. Growing up in rural Colorado, Danny had faced his share of challenges. Cold winters with failing heating. Hard labor on construction sites alongside his father. A childhood accident that had left him with a scar across his ribs, and a deep understanding that life did not give second chances to people who gave up. Earth had taught him to endure. The next morning, Squad 7 gathered in the tactical training room for their first team strategy exercise. Instructor Velik stood at the front, his compound eyes moving across the assembled cadets. Today you will plan a mission, he announced. A simulated rescue operation on a hostile moon. You will work together to create a strategy, assign roles, and present your plan to me. This exercise tests your ability to cooperate and think as a unit. He activated a holographic display showing the mission parameters. A crashed ship on a barren moon. Survivors trapped inside. Enemy patrols surrounding the area. Standard rescue scenario. Begin, Velik said, then stepped back to observe. Gorath immediately took charge. I will lead the assault team. Tyrell, you provide telepathic scanning for enemy positions. Nyx handles communications. The twins will serve as backup. What about me? Danny asked. The Felisari did not even look at him. You stay with the ship. Stay with the ship? Danny repeated. That's not a role. That's keeping me out of the way. Exactly. Gorath finally turned, his yellow eyes cold. You have no combat training recognized by Union standards. You have no special abilities. You would be a liability in the field. He bared his teeth slightly. Stay with the ship, human. Guard the exit. Let the real soldiers do the work. Danny felt his jaw tighten but forced himself to stay calm. I can do more than guard a ship. I've studied the tactical manuals. I know the standard formations. Standard formations mean nothing if you lack the strength to execute them, Gorath replied. Felisari warriors train from childhood. Rylathi developed their mental powers for decades. Even Nyx has natural armor that can stop projectiles. He gestured dismissively at Danny. What do you have? Soft skin and good intentions? Tyrell shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps we should give him a small role, something simple. I agree, Nyx added. The exercise requires full squad participation for maximum scoring. Gorath growled, but seemed to consider this. Finally, he pointed to a position on the holographic map. Fine. You carry the medical supplies. Stay behind the assault team. Do not engage enemies. If someone gets hurt, you bring the supplies. That is all. It was insulting. Carrying supplies was a job for drones, not trained cadets. But Danny nodded. Understood. They spent the next hour refining the plan. Danny stayed quiet, watching and listening. He noticed things the others missed. A gap in the patrol pattern that could allow a faster approach. A structural weakness in the crashed ship that might provide an alternative entry point. A timing issue that left the retreat path exposed. He did not mention any of it. They would not have listened anyway. When they presented to Instructor Velik, the Corvani asked pointed questions that exposed the flaws Danny had spotted. Gorath struggled to answer, growing more frustrated with each correction. The final score was passing but mediocre, well below what the Felisari had expected. Afterward, as the squad filed out of the room, Velik called Danny back. You saw the problems, the instructor said. It was not a question. Danny hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. Why did you not speak? My squad did not want my input, sir. I thought it was better to stay quiet than to cause conflict. Velik's mandibles clicked slowly. A diplomatic answer. But diplomacy does not win battles. He leaned closer. Compound eyes reflecting Danny's face. I have reviewed your file more thoroughly, human. Your test scores in tactical analysis are among the highest in this cohort. Your physical baseline results exceed several species known for strength. And yet you hide. You allow yourself to be dismissed. 10. Danny did not know how to respond to that. I understand survival instincts, Velik continued. On a world like yours, drawing attention can mean death. But you are not on Earth anymore. Here, invisibility is not safety. It is failure. He straightened. Think about that. Danny left the room with the instructor's words echoing in his mind. That night, he lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling while his squadmates slept around him. He had spent his whole life learning when to fight and when to stay quiet, when to push forward and when to hold back. Earth had taught him patience, endurance, the value of waiting for the right moment. Maybe Velik was right. Maybe it was time to stop waiting. Tomorrow was the physical conditioning test. The hardest challenge yet. And Danny had a feeling it would be his chance to show them what he was really made of. He closed his eyes and let himself rest. He would need his strength. The loading bay was enormous. It stretched across the entire lower deck of the station, filled with cargo crates stacked in neat rows under harsh white lights. The air smelled of metal and recycled oxygen. Dozens of cadets from different squads had gathered along the edges of the bay, watching and waiting. Physical conditioning day was legendary at the academy. It broke cadets. It ended careers. Some species simply could not pass, and everyone knew it. Instructor Velik stood at the center of the bay, his uniform perfectly pressed, his compound eyes scanning the assembled squads with cold assessment. Today is simple, he announced, his voice carrying across the massive space. You will move cargo. No anti-gravity assistance, no mechanical help, no tools, only your bodies. He gestured to the crates behind him. These containers hold standard construction materials, metal ingots, dense alloys, real weight. Danny studied the crates. They came in different sizes, from small boxes that looked manageable to massive containers that towered over even the tallest cadets. He had worked with heavy materials before, hauling steel and concrete on job sites with his father. He knew what real weight looked like. You will work in squads, Velik continued. Move as many crates as you can from this bay to the storage depot at the far end. Distance is approximately 200 meters. Time limit is 1 hour. His mandibles clicked sharply. Begin. Chaos erupted as squads rushed toward the crates. Cadets from stronger species immediately grabbed the medium-sized containers, grunting and straining as they lifted. Weaker species grouped together, combining their strength to drag smaller boxes across the floor. Squad 7 gathered near the edge of the bay. Gorath was already moving toward a medium crate, his powerful Felisari muscles bunching under his fur. Twins, you take the small ones, he ordered. Tyrell and Nyx, work together on another small one. Human, just stay out of the way. Danny watched as his squadmates struggled. Gorath managed to lift a medium crate, but his arms shook and his legs trembled. He could only carry it 20 meters before having to set it down and rest. Sayla and Mira worked together on a small container, their slender arms straining, their bioluminescent patterns flickering rapidly with the effort. Tyrell and Nyx barely managed to drag their box across the floor, making painfully slow progress. Around them, other squads were having similar difficulties. A group of Corvani cadets failed to lift a large crate together, their natural exoskeletons crackling under the stress. A Rylothi collapsed from exhaustion after only 3 trips. Even the strongest species were reaching their limits, and still the largest crate sat untouched at the center of the bay. It was massive, nearly 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. According to the markings on its side, it weighed over 300 kilograms by Earth standards. Instructor Velik walked past it and raised his voice. This container is the final challenge. Any cadet who can move it alone receives maximum marks for the exercise. Full credit. Immediate recognition. Cadets glanced at the crate and quickly looked away. 300 kilograms was impossible. No species present could lift that much weight alone. Not the Felisari. Not the Corvani. Not anyone. Danny stared at the container. 300 kilograms. On Earth, that would be difficult. Challenging. But not impossible. He had seen strong men lift more. He had helped his father move engine blocks that weighed nearly as much. Human bodies were designed for heavy gravity, for carrying loads that would crush beings from lighter worlds. He started walking toward the crate. Gorath noticed and laughed harshly. "What are you doing, Deathworlder? Going to look at it?" Danny did not answer. He kept walking until he stood directly in front of the massive container. Up close, it was even more intimidating. Solid metal walls, reinforced handles, the weight of a small vehicle compressed into a rectangular box. The bay had grown quiet. Other cadets stopped their work to watch. Instructor Velik turned, compound eyes focusing on the human standing alone before the impossible challenge. Danny crouched down. He placed his right hand on the cargo handle, feeling the cold metal against his palm. He took a slow breath, filling his lungs completely. Then he exhaled and lifted. His legs drove upward, his back straightened, his arm flexed, muscles tightening under his skin. The crate shifted, then rose, then left the ground entirely. Danny stood up straight, 300 kilograms hanging from his right hand like it was nothing more than a suitcase. The silence in the bay was absolute. Gorath's mouth hung open, showing all of his teeth. Tyrell made a small sound of disbelief. Nyx's antennae went rigid. Sayla and Mira stopped glowing entirely, their patterns frozen in shock. Danny shifted the crate onto his shoulder to balance the weight better, then started walking toward the storage depot. His boots thudded against the deck plating. 1 step, 2 steps, 10 steps, 20. The crowd parted before him, cadets scrambling to get out of his way. He did not slow down. He did not stumble. He did not show any sign of strain. Behind him, he heard voices breaking through the silence. "That's not possible. His skeleton should have shattered. How is he doing that? What are humans made of?" Danny reached the storage depot and set the crate down gently, making sure not to damage the floor. Then he turned around and walked back. Everyone was staring at him. Instructor Velik had moved closer, his compound eyes examining Danny with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "Human," the instructor said slowly. "What is the gravity on your homeworld?" "About 9.8 meters per second squared, sir," Danny replied. "Standard Earth gravity." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Most species in the Galactic Union came from worlds with gravity between 3 and 6 meters per second squared. Earth's gravity was nearly double the average. To the aliens watching, it was the equivalent of living at the bottom of a crushing ocean. "Your species evolved under that pressure," Velik said. "From birth. Every day." Danny nodded. "Yes, sir. We don't really think about it. It's just normal for us." "Normal," Velik repeated. His mandibles clicked in what Danny was starting to recognize as amazement. "You carry that weight every moment of your lives, and you call it normal." Danny looked at his squad mates. Gorath had not moved, his expression a mixture of shock and something that might have been fear. Tyrell was trembling slightly, scales rippling with nervous energy. Nyx was already pulling out a datapad, frantically taking notes. The twins had resumed glowing, their patterns pulsing in rapid patterns that Danny could not interpret. "Gravity on Earth isn't even the hardest part," Danny said quietly, loud enough for his squad to hear. "Our planet has weather that can destroy cities, animals that can kill with a single bite, diseases that have wiped out millions of our people. The air itself becomes poison in some places." He paused. "We don't survive because we're special. We survive because we have no choice. Our world doesn't let us be weak." Sela took a step forward, her chiming voice barely above a whisper. "The records call your world a death world. We thought it was exaggeration." "It's not," Danny said. "Earth is exactly as dangerous as the records say, maybe more." He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had just lifted what should have been impossible. "But that danger made us strong, strong enough to survive anything." The exercise continued, but something had changed. The other squads kept glancing at Danny, at the human who had done what none of them could. His own squadmates followed him in a daze, working in silence, processing what they had witnessed. When the hour ended, Squad 7 had moved more cargo than any other squad. Most of that was Danny's work. Instructor Velik dismissed them without comment, but his compound eyes followed the human all the way out of the bay. That night, nobody in the barracks spoke much. But for the first time, when Danny sat down for dinner, nobody moved away from his table. It was a start. 3 days had passed since the cargo bay incident, and Danny could not walk through the station without being noticed. Cadets from other squads pointed at him in the corridors. Instructors paused their conversations when he entered rooms. Even the station maintenance workers, beings from a dozen different species who usually ignored everyone, stopped their tasks to watch the human walk by. The story had spread faster than any news could travel. The human had lifted the impossible crate. The human had done it with one hand. The human had not even seemed tired afterward. Danny did his best to ignore the attention. He went to training, ate his meals, studied the tactical manuals, and tried to act like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and he could feel it in every interaction. His squadmates were the most affected. Nix had become obsessed. The young Corvani followed Danny everywhere, asking endless questions about human biology. What was their bone density? How did their muscles recover so quickly? What percentage of body weight could an average human lift? Danny answered as best he could, but he was not a scientist. He just lived in his body and did what it could do. Your species should not exist, Nix said one evening, staring at Danny like he was a puzzle that refused to be solved. The energy requirements alone for maintaining muscle mass under Earth gravity should make your size impossible. You should be small, compact, built for efficiency. Instead, you are tall and strong, and can apparently lift 3 times your body weight without significant preparation. Humans are stubborn, Danny replied with a small smile. Evolution tried to make us small. We refused. Tyrrell had stopped flinching whenever Danny moved. The Rylathi still kept some distance, but now it was respectful space rather than fearful avoidance. During training exercises, Tyrrell would sometimes reach out with gentle telepathic touches, trying to sense Danny's emotions. The human had learned to recognize the feeling, like a soft breeze against his thoughts. Your mind is strange, Tyrrell admitted one morning. Most species have clear emotional signatures. Fear, anger, joy. They all feel distinct. But your emotions are layered. You can feel fear and determination at the same time, worry and hope together. It is like listening to music with multiple instruments playing different melodies that somehow create harmony. That's just being human, Danny said. We're complicated. The twins, Selah and Mira, had become genuinely curious. Their bioluminescent patterns would brighten whenever Danny approached, and they asked questions about Earth with the eagerness of children discovering a new toy. What did the sky look like? How did water feel when it fell from clouds? What were the predators that humans had learned to fear? Danny told them about thunderstorms, about the way lightning could split the sky and the thunder could shake the ground. He described oceans that stretched beyond the horizon, filled with creatures that could swallow a person whole. He talked about winters that buried entire cities in frozen water, and summers that dried rivers to dust. Your world sounds terrifying, Mira said, her voice chiming softly. It is both, Danny agreed. Sometimes at the same time. Even Gorath had changed, though the Felisari's pride made it harder to show. He no longer made dismissive comments or tried to exclude Danny from squad activities. During combat drills, he actually began covering the human's position, working with him instead of against him. The insults stopped. The cold looks faded, but it took a week before Gorath finally approached Danny directly. It happened in the barracks, late in the evening when most of the squad had gone to sleep. Danny was sitting on his bunk, writing a message to his family back on Earth, when a shadow fell across his screen. Gorath stood there, his large frame blocking the light. His golden eyes were unreadable, and his mane bristled slightly in what Danny had learned was a sign of nervousness in Felisari. Human, Gorath said quietly. I need to speak with you. Danny set his screen aside. Okay. The Felisari sat down heavily on the bunk across from Danny. For a long moment, he said nothing. His clawed hands gripped his knees, and his tail flicked back and forth in an agitated rhythm. "Among my people," Gorath finally began, "strength is everything. It determines rank, respect, the right to lead. A Felisari who cannot prove their strength is nothing, less than nothing." He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "When I heard a human would join our squad, I was angry. I thought the Union was insulting us, giving us the weakest, most primitive species in the galaxy as a burden to carry." Danny listened without interrupting. "I treated you badly," Gorath continued. "I wanted you to fail. I wanted you to prove that my assumptions were correct, that humans were exactly as pathetic as I believed." His voice dropped lower. "Instead, you lifted weight that would have broken my bones. You did it with one hand, like it was nothing. You showed me that everything I thought I knew about strength was wrong." The Felisari raised his head and met Danny's eyes directly. "I was a fool," Gorath said. "I judged you based on appearance, on assumptions, on the arrogance of my own people. I am asking you to forgive me." Danny considered the request. The past weeks had been difficult. Gorath's hostility had made everything harder, had isolated Danny from his squad mates, had nearly endangered him during training exercises. Part of him wanted to hold on to that resentment, but that was not who he wanted to be. "Forgiven," Danny said simply. Gorath blinked, clearly surprised by the quick response. "Just like that? You do not want to make me suffer first? Make me prove my sincerity?" "No," Danny said. "I don't. Holding grudges takes energy. I'd rather use that energy for something better." He offered his hand, palm up, the way he had seen Felisari warriors greet their allies. "We're squad mates. That means we look out for each other. Everything before today is in the past." Gorath stared at the offered hand for a moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and clasped it with his own clawed grip. "Humans are strange creatures," the Felisari said. "You terrify me, and then you show me kindness. I do not understand you." Danny smiled. "That's okay. We don't always understand ourselves either." From that night forward, Squad 7 began to function as a real team. Gorath's strength, combined with Danny's endurance, Tyrell's telepathy helped them communicate silently during exercises. Nyx's analytical mind caught details the others missed. The twins provided support and coordination that kept everyone working together. They started climbing the rankings. Other squads noticed. Instructors began paying closer attention, and Danny Carter, the primitive Deathworlder who was supposed to fail, started looking like something no one had expected. A leader. Katie messaged him after their squad won their first competitive exercise, beating teams that had trained together for years. "Told you they'd come around," she wrote. Danny looked at his squad mates celebrating their victory, their different species united by a shared purpose. "Yeah," he replied. "I guess they did." But he knew the hardest tests were still ahead. The graduation ceremony took place in the Grand Hall of Valora 9. A massive chamber with walls made of transparent crystal that showed the endless stars beyond. Thousands of beings had gathered to watch, from high-ranking officials of the Galactic Union to family members who had traveled across light years to see their children complete their training. Danny stood in formation with Squad 7, wearing the crisp uniform of a Union cadet. Around him, his squad mates waited with the same nervous energy that filled his own chest. 4 months of training had brought them to this moment. 4 months of struggle, growth, and learning to work together despite their differences. They had made it. The station commander, Admiral Torath, stood at the front of the hall. The elderly Villani was covered in bioluminescent scars from decades of service, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience that demanded respect. "Today, we recognize those who have proven themselves worthy of service to the Galactic Union," Torath announced. "You have been tested in body, mind, and spirit. You have faced challenges designed to break you, and you have survived. Some of you have done more than survive. Some of you have exceeded every expectation." His glowing eyes moved across the assembled cadets and stopped on Squad 7. "This year's cohort has produced exceptional results, but one squad stands above the others. One team has achieved the highest combined scores in physical conditioning, tactical analysis, and cooperative exercises that this academy has seen in over 50 cycles. Danny felt his squadmates straighten beside him. Gorath's fur bristled with pride. Tyrell's scales shimmered. Nyx's antennae stood rigid. The twins glowed brighter than Danny had ever seen. Squad 7, Admiral Torith continued. Please step forward. They moved together, walking to the front of the hall as thousands of eyes watched. Danny could feel the weight of attention, heavier even than the cargo crate he had lifted all those weeks ago, but he kept his head up and his steps steady. The Admiral looked at each of them in turn, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke again. When this squad was formed, many doubted its potential. It contained species that had never worked together. It included a human, the first of his kind to ever attempt our training program. He paused. The human was expected to fail. He did not. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cadet Danny Carter of Earth not only completed every challenge but excelled beyond all predictions. His physical capabilities proved that our assumptions about humanity were dangerously incorrect. His tactical mind contributed to strategies that other squads are already studying. His leadership helped transform a divided group into the most effective team in this cohort. Danny felt his face grow warm but kept his expression neutral. More importantly, Torith continued, Cadet Carter has shown us something about the human spirit that we did not expect. He arrived alone, facing suspicion and hostility from every direction. He could have become bitter, resentful, closed off. Instead, he showed patience, determination, and a willingness to forgive that speaks to the character of his species. The Admiral stepped closer to Danny, close enough that the human could see the patterns of light moving beneath the Villani's scarred skin. The Galactic Union has known humanity for only a short time. We have seen your technology, your history, your complicated cultures, but we did not truly understand what you were until now. His voice dropped lower, but still carried throughout the hall. You are not primitive. You are forged, shaped by a world that tried to kill you at every turn, and you refused to die. You carry that world's gravity in your bones, its dangers in your instincts, its lessons in your hearts. He stepped back and raised his voice again. Squad 7 is hereby granted elite status, the highest honor available to graduating cadets. They will have their choice of assignment anywhere in Union space. They have earned it. The crowd erupted in applause that echoed off the crystal walls. Danny stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the response. Then he felt Gorath's heavy hand on his shoulder, and Tyrell's gentle telepathic touch of warmth and pride, and the twins' bioluminescent glow, washing over him like sunlight. His squad surrounded him, his team, his friends. After the ceremony, Instructor Velik found Danny alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. Human, the Corvani said, his mandibles clicking softly. I owe you an apology. Danny turned, surprised. Sir, when you arrived, I gave you the same assumptions everyone else did. I thought you would fail. I thought your species was too weak, too new, too different to succeed in our world. Velik's compound eyes reflected the starlight. I was wrong. Not just about you, but about what strength really means. What do you mean, sir? Velik moved to stand beside Danny, both of them facing the vast darkness beyond the window. In my culture, we measure strength by what we can destroy, the enemy we can defeat, the obstacle we can break. But you showed me a different kind of strength, the strength to endure when everyone wants you to fail, the strength to forgive when anger would be justified, the strength to lift others up instead of pushing them down. The instructor turned to face Danny directly. Your people call Earth a death world, and that is true. But I think the real danger of your species is not your bodies. It is your spirits. You never stop fighting. You never stop growing. You never stop finding ways to be more than what you were before. He extended one of his upper arms, offering a Corvani gesture of deep respect. The Union has underestimated humanity. That will change. and I believe you will be part of that change. Danny clasped the offered arm. Thank you, sir, for everything. Velik nodded once, then walked away, leaving Danny alone with the stars. Later that night, Katie found him still on the observation deck. She brought 2 cups of something warm and handed one to him before sitting down on the bench beside him. Big day, she said. Yeah. Danny sipped the drink. Some kind of herbal tea that tasted like honey and mint. Feels strange. A few months ago, I was just a kid from Colorado who volunteered for a crazy program. Now I'm a Union elite. You earned it. Maybe. He looked at the stars again, trying to find the direction where Earth would be. Somewhere out there, 8 billion humans were living their lives, most of them having no idea that their species was starting to change the galaxy. What happens now? Now you choose your assignment, Katie said. Elite status means you can go anywhere. The frontier stations, the diplomatic corps, even the special operations teams. She smiled. Where do you want to go? Danny thought about it. He thought about his family back home, about the squad he had grown to love, about the aliens who had gone from fearing him to respecting him. I want to go where I can make the biggest difference, he finally said. Where I can show more people what humans are capable of. Not just our strength, but everything else. Our creativity, our stubbornness, our ability to find friends in the strangest places. Katie laughed softly. You sound like a diplomat. Maybe I am. Danny smiled. Or maybe I'm just a guy from Earth who wants to help his species find its place in the galaxy. He leaned back and looked at the infinite darkness, filled with worlds he had never seen and people he had never met. Somewhere out there, humanity's future was waiting. And Danny Carter, the first human to graduate from the Galactic Union Training Academy, intended to be part of it. The galaxy had underestimated his species. That was about to change. On a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, the sun was rising over the mountains of Colorado. Danny's family was waking up, starting their day, completely unaware that their son had just changed history, but they would find out soon enough. Humanity was ready, and the galaxy would never be the same.